dissertation on my master's research on how winter backcountry recreationists make avalanche risk management decisions. I'd like to start by acknowledging the land on which this research is taking place. In this photo, you're seeing two peaks loved by many people living in Vancouver and referred to with their colonial name, the Lions. Long before they were called the Lions, these peaks were named Chichioy-Elkweken by the Squamish people, which means twin sisters, and refers to two daughters of a chief who were immortalized as these mountains to guard the peace that they had created between nations at war. In this presentation, I'll be referring to places like this as the backcountry, but they're actually places that have supported the livelihoods of and have been cared for by Indigenous peoples since time immemorial. In the context of my research, places like this are called the backcountry, but they're actually places that are imbued with stories that existed long before recreationists stepped into them and long before I came along to study their experiences. As a settler on these lands, I hold myself accountable to including this as important context as I tell the stories of my research. To start today's story, I'll just briefly introduce the context of my study. So when you think about winter backcountry recreation, maybe you picture extreme backcountry sports that are commonly shown in the media. Maybe you picture alpine vistas or people ducking under lines at ski resorts, or maybe you just picture being really, really cold. And you would be right to picture all of these things because winter backcountry recreation is encompassing of a diversity of activities, and a growing number of people are accessing snow-covered mountains in pursuit of a range of objectives and fulfilling experiences. But something all winter backcountry recreationists have in common is the task of managing snow avalanche hazard. As a result, the increase in popularity of winter backcountry activities has also meant that more people are exposed to avalanche hazard. A day of recreating in the winter backcountry is made up of many decisions and actions that occur in an environment characterized by uncertainty and infrequent and potentially consequential feedback. The backcountry environment presents significant risk, which can result in the outcomes that are critical, harmful, and potentially irreversible. In our case, these include near misses, injuries, and losses. However, these decisions and actions also have the potential to lead to great rewards, like standing on a summit or finding a new path to a beautiful viewpoint. The more we know about recreationists' in-field avalanche risk management practices, the better we can support them in making risk-informed decisions in order to safely achieve their objectives in this dynamically changing environment. To date, there have been two main research approaches for examining these practices. The first approach has examined backcountry users' revealed terrain choices. This research has used GPS tracks and time-lapse photography combined with surveys to record recreationist tracks while they're traveling in the backcountry. So the idea is that these tracks represent their terrain choices, and so they're considered to be their decision footprints. These decision footprints are then evaluated as a function of known avalanche hazard parameters and decision biases. Some of these biases come from the second main research approach, which is rooted in judgment and decision making. In this study, a record of avalanche incidents was used to identify 6 heuristics that could be attributed to fatal avalanche accidents. And under the umbrella of human factors, these heuristics encompass much of how the avalanche safety community currently understands recreationist decision making. Both approaches have made significant contributions to our understanding of the choices recreationists make when traveling in the backcountry, and thus to avalanche safety education and public communications. They've also played an important role in facilitating an appreciation of the importance of the human dimensions of avalanche safety. Each of these approaches also have limitations, which leave gaps in our understanding of recreationist decision-making and risk management. The first gap has to do with the idea that all we see is not all there is. Evaluating the outcome of decision-making, so tracks or accidents, only tells us part of the story because they show the choices recreationists make, but not necessarily why or how they made those choices. Additionally, designs informed by an analysis of avalanche accidents alone may be successful in highlighting decision patterns that can lead to bad risk management outcomes, but fall short in their ability to support good risk management decision making. The second limitation comes from the perception of and value attributed to different decision-making approaches. So the association between heuristics and avalanche accidents has resulted in a perception of heuristic decision-making equating to biased or flawed decision-making. In turn, this has generated a perception in the avalanche community that an analytical approach is what's required to make good and safe decisions in the backcountry. The third comes from a lack of involving the critical components of recreationist contexts, including their motivations, the constraints, and any prior experiences. Lastly, both approaches take a top-down, hypothesis-driven approach by evaluating outcomes through a lens of avalanche safety experts rather than through the lens of the users themselves. To gain a comprehensive understanding necessary to support recreationists' unique needs, existing research should be supplemented with methods that start with users, seeking to understand what decision-making approaches are used when, without a judgment of their merit. My study aims to accomplish this by centering the experiences of users. Using an exploratory research approach and qualitative research methods to elicit these bottom-up understandings, we have been conducting 1-hour-long in-depth interviews using a semi-structured questioning approach to elicit rich descriptions of participants' experiences and preserve the meaning that they attribute to those experiences. The design of our interview script is informed by relevant concepts from the fields of risk communication, judgment and decision-making, and avalanche safety, and it's my privilege to share with you some of which we've learned in this process so far. To do this, I'm going to first introduce two people who participated in my interviews under the pseudonyms Sam and Robin. I'll then introduce preliminary representations of their avalanche risk management and decision-making practices, and then I'll discuss how Sam and Robin's experiences contribute to developing improved avalanche risk communications, as well as the significance of these findings to both the avalanche safety community and to the broader community of folks assessing, managing, designing for, and communicating about risk. First, I'd like to introduce Sam, who is a backcountry skier. Sam hasn't been backcountry skiing for long, but they hit the slopes with enthusiasm, and they've been out about 30 times each season. Sam is driven to the backcountry to stand on top of summits and to get good snow conditions, which often takes them to remote places for big days out. They're motivated to learn and care a lot about being out there safely, and as a result, they spend a lot of time researching information, accessing different resources, and taking avalanche safety courses. I'd like to introduce Robin, who is a snowshoer. Robin just finished their first season of snowshoeing, and they've already been out about 20 times because of the accessibility of Vancouver's local mountains. Robin and their friend discovered snowshoeing during pandemic lockdowns as a way of maintaining physical and mental health. And as avid hikers in the summer, snowshoeing seemed like a natural next step. Robin has taken an introductory avalanche safety course, but isn't heavily invested in the sport, and as a result travels without avalanche safety equipment. To fulfill their motivations and achieve their objectives safely, Sam and Robin have to make a number of avalanche risk management decisions, first at a pre-trip stage where they determine when and where to go, and then once they're traveling in the backcountry, where they choose whether to proceed, whether to modify their trip plan, or whether to turn around. As a generalized model of their decision-making at a pre-trip stage, Sam and Robin start by establishing the context of their backcountry trip, their desired backcountry experience. Then they seek and assess avalanche risk information that they deem to be relevant to their desired experience. And from that assessment, they can select a trip objective and destination that they decide meets an acceptable level of risk. Let's now have a look at what happens once they're actually out on their trips. So in the field, Sam continuously seeks information and makes observations to characterize the avalanche conditions as well as the terrain. Many of these considerations are then evaluated using very specific criteria that help Sam determine whether their plan is still reasonable given the risk, and if not, what options exist to treat that risk. The trips Robin selects follow marked trails, but Robin remains attuned to their environment when they're out. In particular, Robin keeps an eye out for information that would clearly and undoubtedly signal to them that they need to modify their trip plan or turn around. Sam and Robin both did an extraordinary job of allowing me in-depth and rich insight into their experiences. While I'm still at the early stages of drawing out those insights, it's abundantly clear that the processes that Sam and Robin use to manage risk and make decisions are very different. We can see that first by looking at the pre-trip stage. So to be able to access the big remote objectives that Sam wants, they consider extensive information which they gather from many different sources. At this stage, they already establish expectations of what they'll see in the field and identify alternative routes that they could select from while they're out. Though following a similar process at a high level, Robin differs in that they start with a set of known trips, some of which they've been on before, and then they filter through those trip options using information from public avalanche safety products and based on the required equipment and skills. Looking at their infield stages, Sam's pre-trip plan serves as a foundation from which to continuously seek information that would help them respond in a way that's appropriate to the assessed level of risk. This approach might be characterized as more analytical or systematic. Turning to Robin, many of the avalanche safety considerations that they feel are relevant have already been evaluated during the filtering of trip options in the planning stage. So a lot of the heavy lifting of their decision making has already been done. That means that rather than needing to continuously seek and evaluate additional observations in the field, Robin is free to direct their attention to a handful of key and clear environmental observations, as well as to their own physical and psychological comfort. I really want to emphasize here that neither of these approaches is necessarily better. Both Robin and Sam's approaches may work perfectly well in different environments under different circumstances. It is not the case that Sam's more analytical or systematic approach is superior, and it's certainly not the case that Robin should be expected to do something similar to Sam in order to recreate safely in the backcountry. Rather, with insight into their unique objectives, processes to achieve them, and associated needs, we can better understand how we might design risk communications and tools that support them both. Simply put, we're developing the understandings needed to connect different users with the right tools designed with their needs in mind. For example, Sam's infield approach might be well supported by a tool that already exists, like the evaluator shown here, which helps guide their observations and evaluations in the field. And we might give Robin a sort of go, no-go tool that identifies places that are and are not suitable for them. In this presentation, I've only shown one representation of how Sam and Robin make avalanche risk management decisions in the field. But in my analysis, I can see that Sam and Robin actually exercise many different decision-making and risk management approaches with varying levels of complexity and employed in different situations. And this is not only true for Sam and Robin. To add further depth, this is a pattern I've heard in all 9 interviews that I've done so far. Sam, Robin, and the other interview participants remind us that when we're asking how we can support the audience that use our avalanche risk communications, we aren't just looking to understand one homogeneous group of recreationists, and that we can't necessarily apply one framework in order to accomplish this. Rather, a comprehensive understanding means understanding the risk management and decision-making of a community of diverse recreationists who are also people and who have unique contexts, capabilities, capacities, and needs. Looking ahead at where we go from here and the route we'll take to get there, this study adds to research that is focused on risk management decision-making at a pre-trip stage, with the hope of better understanding how to meaningfully segment this diverse group of users while also retaining their uniqueness. In doing so, we hope to assist recreationists in navigating the complexity and uncertainty inherent to the winter backcountry. and by supporting risk management decisions and actions so that they can experience many more moments where they fulfill their objectives in a safe and fun way. Before I wrap up, I want to express a heartfelt thank you for those individuals who've participated in my interviews, who've been exceedingly generous and brave, and an absolute pleasure to get to know. I want to thank Avalanche Canada and the Canadian Mountain Network for their continued support and contributions to my study. Last but not least, I'd like to thank you all for your attention, and I look forward to any questions that might come my way, thoughts, suggestions, or anything else. Thanks again.